John Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath is set in the 1930s during the height of the Depression. Small companies and small farmers were doing their best to survive. Large corporations and banks were gobbling up those who failed. This chapter, chapter 25, tells of the bounty that was California and what the farmers had to do, who the farmers had to kill to survive. The spring is beautiful in California. Valleys in which the fruit blooms are fragrant pink and white waters in a shallow sea. Then the first tendrils of the grapes swelling from the old gnarled vines cascade down to cover the trunks. The full green hills are round and soft as breasts, and on the level vegetable lands are mile-long rows of pale green lettuce, in the spindly little cauliflowers, the gray-green, unearthly artichoke plants. And then the leaves break out on the trees, and the petals drop from the fruit trees and carpet the earth with pink and white. The centers of the blossoms swell and grow in color, cherries and apples, peaches and pears, figs which close the flower in the fruit. All California quickens with produce, and the fruit grows heavy, and the limbs bend gradually under the fruit, so that little crutches must be placed under them to support the weight. Behind the fruitfulness are men of understanding and knowledge and skill, men who experiment with seed, endlessly developing the techniques of greater crops of plants, whose roots will resist the million enemies of the earth, the molds, the insects, the rusts, the blights. These men work carefully and endlessly to perfect the seed, the roots. And there are the men of chemistry who spray the trees against pests, who sulfur the grapes, who cut out disease and rots, mildews and sicknesses, doctors of preventive medicine, men at the borders who look for fruit flies, for Japanese beetle, men who quarantine the sick trees and root them out and burn them. Men of knowledge. The men who graft the young trees, the little vines, are the cleverest of all, for theirs is a surgeon's job, as tender and delicate. And these men must have surgeons' hands and surgeons' hearts, to slit the bark, to place the grafts, to bind the wounds and cover them from the air. These are great men. Along the rows, the cultivators move, tearing the spring grass and turning it under to make a fertile earth, breaking the ground to hold the water up near the surface, ridging the ground in little pools for the irrigation, destroying the weed roots that may drink the water away from the trees. And all the time the fruit swells and the flowers break out in long clusters on the vines. And in the growing year the warmth grows and the leaves turn dark green. The prunes lengthen like little green birds' eggs, and the limbs sag down against the crutches under the weight. And the hard little pears take shape, and the beginning of the fuzz comes out on the peaches. Grape blossoms shed their tiny petals, and the hard little beads become green buttons, and the buttons grow heavy. The men who work in the fields, the owners of the little orchards, watch and calculate. The year is heavy with produce, and the men are proud for their knowledge. For of their knowledge they can make the year heavy. They have transformed the world with their knowledge. The short, lean wheat has been made big and productive. Little sour apples have grown large and sweet, and that old grape that grew among the trees and fed the birds its tiny fruit has mothered 1,000 varieties, red and black, green and pale pink, purple and yellow, each variety with its own flavor. The men who work in the experimental farms have made new fruits, nectarines and 40 kinds of plums, walnuts with paper shells, and always they work, selecting, graphing, changing, driving themselves, driving the earth to produce. And first the cherries ripen, $1.50 a pound. Hell, we can't pick 'em for that. Black cherries and red cherries, full and sweet, and the birds eat half of each fruit, and the yellow jackets buzz into the holes the birds made, and on the ground the seeds drop and dry with black shreds hanging from them. The prunes, the purple prunes, soften and sweeten. My God, we can't pick them and dry and sulfur them. We can't pay wages, no matter what wages. And the purple prunes carpet the ground, and first the skins wrinkle a little, and swarms of flies come to feast, and the valley is filled with the odor of sweet decay. The meat turns dark, and the crop shrivels on the ground. And the pears grow yellow and soft, $5 a ton. $5 for 40 50-pound boxes, Trees pruned and sprayed, orchards cultivated, pick the fruit, put it in the boxes, load the trucks, deliver the fruit to the cannery. 40 boxes for $5. We can't do it. And the yellow fruit falls heavily to the ground and splashes on the ground. The yellow jackets dig into the soft meat, and there's a smell of ferment and rot. Then the grapes. We can't make good wine. People can't buy good wine. Rip the grapes from the vines. Good grapes, rotten grapes, wasp-stung grapes, pressed stems, pressed dirt and rot. But there's mildew and formic acid in the vats. Add sulfur and tannic acid. The smell from the ferment is not the rich odor of wine, but the smell of decay and chemicals. Oh well. It has alcohol in it anyway. They can get drunk. The little farmers watched the debt creep up on them like the tide. They sprayed the trees and sold no crop. They pruned and grafted and could not pick the crop. And the men of knowledge have worked, have considered, and the fruit is rotting on the ground, and the decaying mash in the wine vat is poisoning the air, and the taste of the wine, no grape flavor at all, just sulfur and tannic acid and alcohol. This little orchard will be part of a great holding next year, for the debt will have choked the owner. This vineyard will belong to the bank. Only the great owners can survive, for they own the canneries too. And four pears, peeled and cut in half, cooked and canned, still cost 15 cents, and the canned pears do not spoil. They will last for years. The decay spreads over the state, and the sweet smell is a great sorrow in the land. Men who can graft the trees and make the seed fertile and big can find no way to let the hungry people eat their produce. The men who have created new fruits in the world cannot create a system whereby their fruits may be eaten. And the failure hangs over the state like a great sorrow. The works of the roots of the vines of the trees must be destroyed to keep the price, and keep up the price, and this is the saddest, bitterest thing of all. Carloads of oranges dumped on the ground. The people came for miles to take the fruit, but this could not be. How would they buy oranges at 20 cents a dozen if they could drive out and pick them up? And men with hoses squirt kerosene on the oranges, and they are angry at the crime, angry at the people who have come to take the fruit. 1 million people hungry, needing the fruit, and kerosene sprayed over the golden mountains. And the smell of rot fills the country. Burn coffee for fuel in the ships. Burn corn to keep warm, it makes a hot fire. Dump potatoes in the rivers and place guards along the banks to keep the hungry people from fishing them out. Slaughter the pigs and bury them and let the putrescence drip down into the earth. There is a crime here that goes beyond denunciation. There is a sorrow here that weeping cannot symbolize. There is a failure here that topples all our success. The fertile earth, the straight tree rows, the sturdy trunks, and the ripe fruit, and children dying of pellagra must die because a profit cannot be taken from an orange, and coroners must fill in the death certificate, died of malnutrition, because the food must rot, must be forced to rot. The people come with nets to fish for potatoes in the river, and the guards hold them back. They come in rattling cars to get the dumped oranges, but the kerosene is sprayed, and they stand still and watch the potatoes float by. Listen to the screaming of pigs being killed in a ditch and covered with quicklime. Watch the mountains of oranges slop down to a putrefying ooze. And in the eyes of the people there is a failure, and in the eyes of the hungry there is a growing wrath. In the souls of the people the grapes of wrath are filling and growing heavy for the vintage.